Before we call tonight's meeting to order, Dr. McGarry, will you please outline the public participation procedure, sir?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Good evening, Board President Brown, members of the Board of School Directors, and the public. We have three meetings tonight. I'll go through the first proceedings. Just as a reminder, in case people are tuning in, there is an Education and Pupil Services meeting this evening, followed by a Finance and Operations. At the conclusion of both those meetings, there is a special voting meeting, primarily for the hopeful approval of the budget adoption for this year. For participating in the first two meetings, we are going to take comment or questions. Tonight is a question meeting from members of the public first. Those who are attending in person can please come to the microphone, provide their name and address, and specifically identify a report item that they would like to question or comment on this evening. And the board can either answer those questions or direct them to the appropriate administrator to provide answers to those questions. They'll be taken into consideration before the board comes to consensus to move any of these action items forward to another consideration at the next August voting meeting. There will not be a voting meeting in July this summer. If you're participating virtually, there are two ways for you to participate. The first way is to provide your comments or questions to committeequestions@upwardrbsd.org. Again, committeequestions@upwardrbsd.org. Provide your name, address, and the specific report, agenda item you'd like to comment or question, and the board will take that into consideration. You can also phone in at 610-789-7200, extension 2000. Same process. Please provide your name, address, and the specific report, agenda item you'd like to comment or question, and the board will take that into consideration. Again, those who are in person would go first, and then we will go to comments or questions. I handled them last time, but not nearly as good as Ms. Buford, who is with us tonight. So she typically reads the questions and the comments to the public. So that's, if there's a need for updating that, Board President Brown, I certainly will.
Thank you, Dr. McGarry. And since we have an unconventional program tonight, feel free to interject anytime and help the public guide them through that, okay? The meeting of the Education and Pupil Services Committee will please come to order. Roll call, Board Secretary, Mr. Rogers, please.
Dr. Haig.
Present.
Mr. Desnoyers.
Present.
Mr. Neal.
Present.
Mr. Warsavage.
Present.
Ms. Lamar Murphy. Ms. Williams.
Present.
Ms. Mitchell. Mr. Fields.
Present.
Mr. Brown.
Present. Mr. Rogers, Directors Mitchell and Lamar Murphy are excused. The district posted this evening's agenda to board docs at least 24 hours prior to the commencement of this meeting. Is there a motion to approve that previously posted agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any amendments to offer?
No, there are not.
Thank you. The agenda has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed, please signify by saying I oppose and state your name for the record. Those abstaining, please signify by saying I abstain and state your name for the record. The motion carries. I will now turn over the Education and Pupil Services Committee agenda to Co-Chair Director Williams.
Thank you, President Brown. I'm going to have Mrs. Kelly or Mr. Marshallak begin with an overview of the agenda items for this evening, please.
Good evening, everyone. So tonight we have 3 items on the agenda as well as some policies to review that will be going through a first reading during the last board meeting and a second reading if they are approved. So the first item on the agenda is the wellness policy update that Dr. Puglisi will be presenting this evening, which is informational. The second item is Lightspeed Classroom Management that I will be presenting along with Mr. Holinsky that will require board action. The third item is the 22-23 professional development calendar, which would also require board action. And those are the items for this evening.
And please continue. Thank you.
Absolutely. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Puglisi, who's going to give us an annual update on the district wellness committee. So Dr. Puglisi.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly, Director Williams. Good evening, everyone. Very grateful to be here this evening to represent the District Wellness Committee and present the annual update to the board and to the public. Our Wellness Committee is made up of a variety of folks coming from different groups across our school district. We're very excited to have board members. Mr. Brown, thank you for representing the board, supporting the board and the committee. We have members of the public, parents, community members, administrators, teachers, students as well. And we're very fortunate to have different opinions and different perspectives. And just as a suggestion, anyone who's interested in becoming part of our committee and helping move the district forward in the area of wellness, we're certainly happy to have new members and new ideas support the promotion of wellness. As a review, our board policy 246, which is school wellness, calls for an assessment of our wellness policy every 3 years. We last, or most recently, conducted this assessment and reported to the board in June 2020. And so this upcoming school year and this time next year, the Wellness Committee will conduct and report out a similar assessment. And the goal and the purpose of the assessment is for us to do an internal review of how well we are adhering to the policy and how well our initiatives in the schools and our other areas across the school district align with what our policy calls for and encourages. One of the really exciting parts of where the Wellness Committee is today is that we've decided to focus our efforts on promoting physical activity as an area of emphasis. And we're excited about that. We believe that physical activity is such an important part of overall wellness, and we're excited to be able to promote that as a committee. And so, in addition to that general promotion, we're also asking the board to consider some added language to Board Policy 246, specifically related to physical activity. I'll talk briefly about some of those recommendations or those suggestions, but a couple pieces of information prior to that. First, the suggestions come directly from our wellness assessment. And so what we were able to do, or what we learned when we did the assessment in June of 2020, is we realized that there was some specific language that Pennsylvania Department of Education encourages related to physical activity that was not included in our policy. And so our goal is to include that language in the policy because we know it aligns with what the Pennsylvania Department of Education encourages, and we know it aligns with best practices related to physical activity. And it's also important to know that these suggestions, from our perspective, enhance our current efforts, but they don't commit us to any scheduling changes or any curriculum changes. So the language will help strengthen our policy, move us forward, and certainly at some point in the future, if we want to think about scheduling or curriculum changes, that is something that we certainly would be happy to consider. But these suggestions don't commit us to any of those changes. This slide has just a summary of the language that we are suggesting to be included, and it's really just general encouragement around physical activity, ways to incorporate encouraging both students, staff, the community to increase physical activity throughout the course of the day, throughout our programs. So these are summaries. We will certainly provide the specific language to the board for your consideration after today's presentation. One of the things that makes me most proud about our Wellness Committee is that, and we incorporated this a few years ago, is that our committee is a district wellness committee, and we focus on student wellness as well as employee wellness. And we look at those two pieces as equally important. And so we see here on the screen a number of the initiatives that we have in place to support employees. We still offer the Employee Assistance Program. We are still part of the Delaware County Healthcare Trust, in which there are many opportunities provided for our staff to promote both physical, social, and emotional wellness, and you see a number of those initiatives here. So I'm really proud that our district has incorporated both concepts, or both groups, I should say, students and employees in our overall wellness initiatives and in the overall wellness policy. In terms of thinking about the future, we will certainly share the suggested language that we would like and that we would ask the board to consider regarding improvements around physical activity to Board Policy 246. And as always, we believe that there are so many wonderful initiatives in place right now across the district. And as we continue to align them and as we continue to find points of connection, each of those programs will complement and strengthen one another. And certainly when it comes to physical, social, and emotional wellness, we will continue to improve. And as a wellness committee, we're just thrilled to be a part of that, and we're thankful to have an opportunity to help move the district forward in this regard. Thank you for your attention this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions or listen to any comments, anything that anybody else would like to share. I appreciate this opportunity.
Mine is more of a thank you. As an active participant on the committee, any committee is only as good as its leader. And the enthusiasm and diligence that you bring to the committee is refreshing, and I want to thank you for all the work that you put in, and hopefully you'll allow me to stay on it.
Thank you. We certainly will.
So I'll echo President Brown's thank yous. I also just am hoping that this is getting tied in. So we did the Safe Routes to Schools initiative, and sort of any efforts that we can do to tie this in with that would be great. That's something that could really, there's sort of multiple birds with the stone of kids walking and biking to school, right? The exercise for them, but also I know that managing car line is like one of the biggest headaches at every school. And so any efforts to coordinate that are much appreciated.
Thank you, Dr. Haig. One of the bullets here is encouraging walking and biking to school. So we are going to ask the board to include that language in the policy, and if we want to move that into more of a commitment, we're happy to discuss. The Wellness Committee is happy to be a part of that discussion and help move that forward in any way that we can.
I would also like to thank you for the presentation, and I look forward to discussing these recommendations in our policy group and bringing them to the board.
If no one else had a thing. I know Wendy Elgard has some really good work that she's done with nutrition for the students, and I want to just make sure that there's some connection between the wellness that you're doing and the nutrition, the great work she's doing. Is there some connection?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Ms. Elgard is a key member of our committee, and certainly is very we connect absolutely with respect to nutrition being a very important part of overall wellness.
Thank you.
You got it.
Any other questions from board members?
Nope, I think we're good, Deborah.
Dr. Puglisi, thank you.
We can move on to our second agenda item.
Okay, thank you. The second agenda item is the Lightspeed Classroom Management, which would require board action, or to move forward tonight for a board vote at the second meeting this evening. So as Mr. Helinski joins me this evening, I wanted to point out why I'm bringing Lightspeed Classroom to your attention tonight. So each month I meet with teachers from IAC, it's called. So it's the Instructional Affairs Committee. And they bring forward concerns as well as items that they would like to see as improvements in the curriculum. This is one of those items that they would like to see as we were venturing through that virtual learning environment, and that's why this was being brought forward. So a few months ago, they did ask me to look into how they can monitor what students were looking at on their devices, and I've been working with Mr. Holinsky on that, as well as the curriculum and instruction team, to see what product would be the best. So that's why I'm bringing it forward this evening. Mr. Holinsky looked at multiple products. This is the one product that, based on the cost and the integration of other infrastructures that we already had in place, would make the most sense, and that's why I'm bringing forward the Lightspeed Classroom. Mr. Holinsky is here to answer any technical questions that I may not be able to answer as I'm looking at it through the curriculum and instruction lens, of course. So I wanted to talk about what Lightspeed Classroom is, how it supports student engagement, some of the system highlights that we have, and how we would implement, if it is approved, the professional development and cost of implementation. This product is used throughout the county in a few of our neighboring schools. It's also used in some of the other neighboring counties as well in their schools, as everyone is dealing with what are students actually navigating to in the classroom. I will tell you, years ago when I was in the classroom, I was one of the Classrooms for the Future teachers when that grant came about, and I couldn't even tell you how long ago. But one of the pieces was that we were able to see what the students were navigating. It was and you could see, you know, if they went to ESPN and came back to math class. So this does the same sort of thing, and I will show you some screenshots of what students are able to, or what the teacher is able to see that the students are navigating to. So it is a cloud-based classroom management solution, and it gives the teachers the ability to see what is going on the students' screens. As they are, of course, walking around the classroom and monitoring, sometimes it is hard, and kids are very, very savvy at hiding the next tab or hiding a screen or whatever else they do. And we want to make sure that we are keeping everybody on track for student engagement and learning. So what this is able to do to support student engagement is you are able to monitor the digital workspace for the students. It's in real-time visibility for the teacher. Teachers can also monitor, of course, the student screens, like I was just talking about, and they're also able to close the distracting tabs. So they're able to block if a student does navigate to a gaming site or something like that, which we do block many, and like I said, we block over 100 of them, and Bob's team blocks hundreds of them on a daily basis. But students, like I said, are savvy, and they find a way to get around some things. So the teachers are able to block additional ones, and they're also able to close those distracting tabs as well. It also allows the teacher to share a tab. So if I wanted everybody right now to go to National Geographic and look at one specific site, I'm able to push that out as a teacher. So I'm not saying, okay, guys, everybody go to the toolbar, type in www, where you're chewing up classroom time, just trying to get students to navigate to that place. So, and especially when students are smaller, it does take a little bit more time to, type in the URL. This is the case that you can share that very, very quickly with all the students in the classroom. So there's some of the highlights. I also wanted to point out that this is what the teacher would see. So this would be my classroom, let's say, and each of those little tabs, and the reason that we had to use screen or snapshots in this is we, of course, don't have students right now, and we can't have a live group of students on here, and that's since this is cloud-based, since it is a live and in-person piece of software that happens, we had to do some screenshots. So Trevor was gracious enough to provide me these screenshots. So what you would see, those little purple squares would be the screens that students would be navigating to. The other screens, we would see that students are not quite there yet, and we might want to encourage those students to get to the screen that they need to. But you're able to see all the students in your classroom and the sites that they are on with this software. The next thing you can do is, like I was saying, you can lock the screen. So if I wanted to have a demonstration and all of a sudden I need to talk and I saw that students were not paying attention, I could lock their screens so that they're no longer playing on their device and say, okay, guys, I need your attention for a second. You can lock their screen. That would be the screenshot on the left. That you would see. Everybody's screen would be locked for that minute, and then I would be able to give the directions and then release everybody back to what the instruction that had to happen. As a teacher, also, like I was describing, venturing to National Geographic, the slide on, or the screenshot on the right shows that, okay, I'm going to push that out to everybody. Everybody is looking at the same screen as I'm giving my directions or my demonstration to the class. So there's some highlights that we have with this system. The other system highlight that that a teacher can use is if unusual browsing is happening. So if they're venturing somewhere, I don't have to draw everybody's attention to Mr. Fields, who might be on a different screen. Sorry, Mr. Fields. I could say, here, a little tiny tab would come up and say, come back to the class, please. We're learning algebra tonight. So that's what we're doing. So that's what the notification would be for unusual browsing, but it's not offensive. It's right there for that student, and you can bring them right back to the learning that has to happen. So a few ways to really increase that student engagement in the virtual learning environment. The next thing would be just the professional development and some costs that I wanted to just talk about. So the professional development we have allotted, which I will bring up in my next presentation with professional development, is that August we've dedicated some time to, of course, online resources and using the multiple learning environments, in person, synchronous and asynchronous. So there's plenty of time, not plenty of time, but there's time built into the professional development calendar to help teachers navigate through that. We're also working on the manual. Trevor has been great with those screenshots and developing that manual for students. For the teachers to learn how to use the software. God bless you. And the classes are also linked directly from eSchool, so teachers are not entering student names or anything like that. It's a direct connection from our Student Information Center. The cost of the product is $75,000 for a 3-year contract, so it will begin the 22-23 school year and bring us all the way through for the next 3 years. Like I said, when we were looking at other products, the price point for this one did seem very good, and as well as connecting to eSchool and our other Lightspeed, that's what it's called, Lightspeed filtering system. So that was why we brought this one forward. This is going to be paid out of the ESSER funds as well, so there would be no cost to the district. So that's it. So let me ask for any questions at this point, and me and Mr. Holinsky will do our best to answer them.
Thank you for the presentation, always. So 75,000, this school district-wide or high school, secondary?
It is district-wide. It would be K through 12 that we would be implementing this.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. That's really.
Yeah, the pricing is based on student counts, so given our whole student count of 12,500 about.
Still, I mean, it's still pretty impressive. I've used tools like this, haven't been an instructor, and I've had to use it for adults. So, and the great thing about the rolling out the Chromebooks is all the advantages that come with that, but the big con is the pipeline to distraction that exists on each one of these devices. And this seems like a friendly way to manage that. It's not overbearing or anything like that. And it seems like it could be very helpful. So I'm looking forward. And this, I mean, distraction is like really something. I'm sure there's enough in the classroom just with 28 kids and everybody has a phone and everybody's trying to get work done. And then you put something that's basically a television in front of them and try to get them to focus on the work in the room. And so this is a great way. This seems like a great way to manage that. And it's something that it's not just special to kids, not just special to Upper Darby. I've been in plenty of classrooms with adults where I've had to go, okay, I'm going to push the button. And now you're all looking at my screen. Yeah, it's worse, you know. And So this is great, and so thank you very much for this, and wow, 75,000 for the entire district is like amazing for 3 years. That is great. 25,000 a year, that is spectacular. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I did forget to mention that we have tried it in other classrooms just to see how how it connects to eSchool and pieces like that and how it works. And the ease for the teacher has been the highlight for everything, like how simple it has been. So that was definitely part of why we were bringing this one forward.
So eSchool connects with this, so as long as students schedule it in the classroom, the entry and withdrawals will come and go on a daily basis on the nightly sync, and it just populates for them.
I guess I have one more question. So what about when we have kids that are virtual? It's all, it's the
Yes, they're in that class as well.
They're in that classroom as well.
So using our device, our Chromebooks, they'll be able to connect
Doesn't
and
matter
see
where
with
they
the
are.
teacher, so the teacher can take control of theirs even though they're at home.
Oh, man, so many kids are going to be upset. That's great.
So I'm smiling. I really like this. As an engineer, I like this. I do have a few questions. Do we tell the students that we're monitoring? I want to.
So part of our communication plan will be that it will be highlighted in our family handbook, our employee handbook, our student handbook, so that everyone knows. As part of our policy, also 815 acceptable use, we are telling them that we are monitoring what is going on. So we will definitely keep that in mind, and we will definitely tell the students, guess what, guys, we know what you're doing.
Right, or at least have a banner that they see in the beginning that says that.
Yeah, and in our current system with the Lightspeed filter we have now, we can always go back a month at a time or whatever and see everything the kids visited over that period of time.
Okay, good,
And
good,
see
good.
that stuff.
What was I going to say? Oh, do the students sign an acceptable use policy?
Yeah, it's in our handbook, and so it's assumed, since it's all in our handbook, that they've read it and taken over. But actually getting the signature and all those 12,000 pieces of paper, we don't have that.
Now, I worked in a middle school in another lifetime, and at that time, kids and the parents had to sign an acceptable use policy to, at least adhere to the rules of engagement for technology. So, but we have just a handbook that they are supposed to read, right? We make that assumption that they read it, right? Okay.
We have a handbook that goes out. It's electronically available. It goes out in a letter. We work on it each year. We're updating it again with all policies and procedures. And it has become very difficult in the school district to get people to return signed copies of that. So it goes out in my letter, it's posted on the website, and it's communicated to the community as well.
What many districts will do is, because they have problems getting signed paper copies back during enrollment in the fall, they'll simply have it as an electronic sign-off. So you do get that sign-off even if you're not getting an actual paper copy of it.
Okay. Thank you. And my last question is about, so it's cloud-based, right? So it doesn't matter what device they're using. It just has to be our device. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, because there's an extension for the Lightspeed filtering product that we have right now that's on the Chromebook, and that ties into this product.
Okay.
So our main internet filtering, and this is a separate module for Lightspeed that ties into that.
Okay.
So we don't have to worry about doing block sites again or whitelisting anything else, or other products we would have had to purchase. We would have to have another filtering system as well. So that
Do we have a
products-
backbone, or is it something installed on our end, like on our server or something like that, that controls it all, or?
Years ago, it used to be on, they called it a Rocket, it was an appliance-based, and
Mm-hmm.
everything had to go through there. But nowadays, every time you buy a Chromebook, it's all part of the cost of the Chromebook. So, and it's all in there for the life of the device. Where other products like GoGuardian, for example, you have to pay an annual fee for it.
Okay.
Where our Lightspeed filtering, once we have it on our device, it's there for the life of the device.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's all I have.
I have a few questions, and I'm just also trying to understand because part of what you said, Mr. Helinski, you said we already have the capacity to look at, for example, a student's browser history. Is that essentially what you were saying?
Yes, correct. So if a teacher needs to say, where's Bob been for the last week or so, we have to run a report, and you see every site that he's gone to, type of thing, where the teacher can see this real time.
Right, so this is live, and this is,
Yes.
and we sort of discussed this, but this is for the Chromebooks only. If a student logs into eSchool through their personal device, do we still have this capability, or no?
No, because we wouldn't be.
It's only through the
we-
Chromebook, strictly.
We have no ability to take over their machine.
Okay, great. And so I guess my main concern is just, I can see a lot of teachers there's going to be a wide range of how teachers use this and how much they use it, right? And as a teacher myself, I can certainly see the advantages. It's very exciting. But I do have concerns about sort of privacy in the age of surveillance and all these things. And also, when we first went virtual in my own classroom, there were so many things that I was being told that sort of felt very Big Brother-ish. I had to tell the students this and tell them that, and it became this sort of, virtual police state. So I'm interested in hearing more about the training that teachers are going to get, and also when they're going to be encouraged to use it and when they're going to be able to use it. So, for example, is a teacher allowed to use this outside of class hours? Is a teacher, are we going to require that they make an announcement each time, or is it just going to sort of be a blanket thing? When is it going to be okay? So I know that there's a recording tool. When is it going to be okay for teachers to use the recording tool? And I'm concerned about maybe a need for policies or a set of rules on addressing this, because I do have concerns about sort of over-surveilling our students.
I'll answer the professional development piece of it. Like I said, the classrooms that we were able to get into and see how it would integrate with eSchool, the ease of use was there. So the amount of professional development, I don't see it taking many hours at all to implement. We will offer the manual. We will offer office hours if somebody needs additional training and things like that. But the ease of use is definitely there for this product. You want to jump in with the other piece of that?
Yeah, so when the teacher gets in the classroom, so there's a time slot that they will set the time. So for 45 minutes, for example, they will set the time, and they'll only have control of those devices for that time. So when that 45 minutes is up, the kids are going to the next class. They can't control that kid's device at that point. So
Can you just sort of clarify, like, what limits that? Like the teacher, you're saying the teacher sort of schedules the use? Is that
Sure.
sort of what you're saying?
So a couple of things, the way the software works. You can have time slots, like at the high school level, you have a time periods and everything, and you can put those into the system, or you can go in and say, okay, at 8:10, we're going to start math, and for the next 45 minutes. But, in elementary schools, it might be at 8:10, might be 8:15, 8:20. So that gives the teacher the leeway to go in and say, okay, we're going to start class now, and it's going to be for 45 minutes, or however long it's going to take for that class. And then when that's up, that expires, and the kids go to the next class, their devices will now be available for the other teacher going to the next period.
So worst case scenario, and I just want to be very clear that I think our teachers are wonderful, fabulous people who do amazing, amazing work, but let's say someone tries to use this after hours. Would the system allow them to use it after hours?
No, we'll set up roles within the system, so after 4 o'clock type of thing, you're done for the day type of thing, so.
Thank you for that information. That's very helpful. I have a few additional questions about the recording feature. So, and this is that Dr. Haig brought up. So you did mention that we have the capability now and do log URLs visited. The recording capability that's in this platform, is it recording browser activity or recording what's happening on the desktop? Okay, so yeah, so I'm and is that an optional thing that the teacher could turn on or off? And where the recording's stored, how long are they stored for, and things like that?
So yes, the teacher can turn the recording on and off. So if they're doing a lesson and they want to save that recording for later on, students can view it later on for their homework assignment or for extra work later. They could do that. So the teacher would have control of that in the classroom.
Would that be just recording the teacher's computer? or would that be recording activities on the students' computers?
It would be the teacher's machine as she,
Okay.
him or her doing the lessons, and then they can save that lesson for later on.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm good with that.
Can we clarify that? Because I thought when I was reading about it that their teachers would be able to record students' screens, and that was part of what was concerning to me.
Well, if the teacher asks the student to present, and as part of that presentation, then that part would be recorded as well.
Okay, but a teacher, so we saw the screen a moment ago that had sort of the thumbnails of all the different students. Does the teacher have the ability to click on, Joe Schmo and record his screen for some duration because she wants to?
I'd have to double check on that piece of it, to be honest with you. Once she's taken over the class and all the computers in the class, she would be recording all their devices. So if a kid's getting out of line, she'd bring them back and say, go to this website type of thing.
But we're not talking about history, we're talking about recording the screen. Unless I'm mistaken, my understanding is that this gives our teachers that capability, which, I'm not saying that's wrong, I'm saying it brings a number of concerns that have to be addressed.
I guess that comment has come up both ways, and I understand. I think the question for clarity that's in front of us now is obviously recording browser history and everything is part of this. I think Dr. Haig and Mr. Desnoyers, and obviously they were clear about what they're asking, is if it's being recorded, let's say I do a presentation on the symbolism in Lord of the Flies, and we're going through each one of the characters, so-and-so represents this, and the fire represents hope, and kids are interacting, or there's a parent exchange on the recording as that's happening, excuse me, and that's saved, right? That whole entire experience is saved versus just the concept of saving the browser history. My lesson and the interactions of the students or an interaction that occurred in the background is saved, and we have to be mindful of what is being posted in that particular situation, I think is the question, and that privacy. Is that part of the question?
I'm talking about the ability to record a student's screen during the lesson.
Right, and
Not the browser history or
That's what I'm saying.
or even
So-
just the thumbnails, but the full student screen, yeah.
Right, and I think what we're hearing is when this is going on, if I were to do that presentation, and the students are a part of this presentation, and it's a student who's virtual versus being in person, I think you are capturing that student's screen and what's going on that student's screen in this particular situation.
My understanding is that that's not the only scenario that might, again, I could be wrong, I only know what I read, and it didn't go into great detail, but my understanding is that the teachers have the ability to record student screens. And my understanding was not simply, so there's the specific case of the teacher, great idea, so-and-so, here, share your screen. Okay, everybody look at what so-and-so did, but actually the ability to individually record.
I don't know, I don't know the particulars about why they would do that, but I think in this particular situation, the bigger overarching comment should be twofold. When the teachers have made it crystal clear that they're concerned about what is going on with students, and the ability to capture that is important to them, A. B, the idea of that's happened to a neighboring school district, I guess it's 8 or 9 years ago now, which is this idea of turning on a camera or monitoring somebody and capturing that is not what we are talking about doing here on their own time. But while the student is in that classroom session, doing what they're doing, I think is a different concept in comparison to on your own time after hours, the camera turning on and somebody recording you. That's not what we're doing here with this product, and it should be made clear that those parameters are set, that there is no recording or no camera being used for those reasons, versus in the classroom setting, your communication, your lesson, so the teacher's doing that lesson, the students should be made aware of, we are recording this lesson, this will be posted for other students. We should also make sure that if there is an exchange that occurs, that we wouldn't then turn around and use that exact lesson if there was some kind of an exchange that occurs and post that as part of this professional development, that we wouldn't, if there was maybe a virtual student or something happens in the classroom, inappropriate language is used or comments that are made, that we wouldn't then repost a screen saving event that would be derogatory or hurtful, if that makes sense. I understand the concern is about individual screens being saved, but I think we have to come out and be upfront. If you're recording it, we should assume everybody's screens are being recorded at that moment. with this
So
software.
we would be capturing that as part of our current Lightspeed filtering process.
The
So
browsing.
The browsing, correct, the browsing of where they're going. So that would be no different than this.
Again, the question is, I have a computer, I'm on it. Board President Brown, Dr. Haig, you're giving a presentation. As that presentation is happening and it's being recorded, are you individually recording my screen as well? Not just my browser, like what's on my screen, me, my communication that's going on? But technically, that would only be if they're virtual, correct?
It would be the browser information that you have on your screen, not the rest of your desktop or any of that nature, just the browsing history.
I'm just not hearing a lot of clarity. It seems like we keep sort of talking around each other, and it doesn't sound clear to me that we know exactly what this tool is capable of, and that's making me a little bit nervous.
I know Dr. Haig found some document online that provided some information about this product platform. I guess if I ask essentially for additional information or for additional research to be completed to provide more clarification, that will delay approval. And does that in and of itself constitute a problem?
What that would do is we would have to table it until the August board meeting, because we would not have a July. We would have to table it to August. And then we would then have to start the process of syncing it with the systems and everything else, which would probably get very, very close to when students would be coming back and teachers and delaying the PD and things like that. So that the timeline would be a little bit crunched at that point.
So can I make a suggestion, since I'm the person who sort of started the wrench in the works, that I would be comfortable approving this tonight with sort of the stipulation that there would be some follow-up information and also just really clear, explicit guidelines for teachers on, appropriate use of this kind of thing, because it just, I say this as someone who works in higher ed, and my colleagues in higher ed have shown a very wide range of beliefs on what is acceptable, what are acceptable ways to treat students and speak to students. And so I'm certainly not in any way, our teachers are amazing. I have such incredible respect for them, but I know that at all levels, human beings are different, and you just can't trust everyone. And I would just like really clear guidance for teachers on how this is to be used appropriately, and maybe some specific examples of what not to do, or things like that, because I don't want our students to feel policed, and at the same time, I don't want our students to be sort of vulnerable to someone who's sort of looking for a problem around every corner.
If I can, I think it's important following this meeting, if we can get just agreeable to what we're coming in, and we can put like an FAQ out from now until that period of time. So what I'm hearing, and I could get it wrong, is this idea of the times that this would be used appropriately and the rules for the times. Secondly, summarizing back the concept of what is being recorded. Again, several years ago in a school district, the district parameters were they could use the camera on the device to record what was going on. It became a pretty serious lawsuit.
Yeah.
Versus, is this recording students interacting that way, or is it simply covering their browser history? So clarity of...
So there's browser history and there's browser screen, right? There's live what's happening on the screen, and then there's browser history, and those are two different things. And then there's a third thing that you're talking about, which is a very scary point about the webcam and all of that.
I'm trying to get all three of these covered. So browser history, and then the actual desktop, the actual covering of it. So let me start over, because we're very particular. The desktop itself, which is very important. The camera, the web camera recording, which to my is not doing that at all, but I think we should make sure, to Dr. Haig's point, that's a concern for people.
And make sure to communicate that to people.
Yes. And then, now I've lost my train of thought. The third part would be browser history, covering the actual desktop and the web camera being used. Fourth being explicitly stating the parameters and the hours that this would be in use, not to be used before or after school hours. And then also, to put it out there, when you do walk into the school setting in loco parentis, you really have to follow what's going on in the classroom, rules and procedures. You really shouldn't be going out and violating the code of conduct and the policy that's there too. So I think we could turn that around pretty quickly, probably in the next 24 hours, provide that update to the public and to the board, and then go from there.
I have a comment. One was at the special voting meeting tonight. What report is this in?
It will, so at the
Oh,
conclusion.
that's a question. I'm sorry.
That's okay. At the conclusion of this meeting, if we move these forward, Ms. Hingston is going to add them
As an
the
amendment.
resolutions to curriculum and instruction.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then my comment, actually, was, I know we're using ESSER fundings for this, and it's for 3 years, and by the time that, year 3 is finished and we're looking to renew, and I think Craig would be the person to answer this, ESSER funding would no longer be available for us to use at that point. So my comment is just for the administration. I know Craig is fabulous at his job, is to keep that in mind as we're budgeting through the years, that I know we've been seeing a lot of ESSER funding, that I feel like it's going to be like an avalanche of all these curriculums and things that we've added that are just piling up. I don't want to go through a year where we're increasing taxes a substantial amount. So I just wanted to put that comment out there on the record. Okay.
I don't want to steal Christine and Bob's moment here, but we can discuss that during the budget presentation. We'll get in that in a little bit more detail, because it's not just $75,000 for a 3-year license that we would be concerned about, but we'll get into that in detail if the board would like during the budget meeting.
Again, this is the rub that we have, that we are obligated to spend this money in this creative way when we've been given it to put these resources in play. As difficult as they are, really good questions. They're, we talk about teachers about online learning, and there was an article that just came out, I shared it with the board, about the rising cost of cyber charter schools in the last 2 years and the use of technology. One thing too, board member Neil, is who knows in 3 years too what other technology is going to be there and the cost of that too. It's another good point of 3 years, and then what's the next thing on the horizon. So when we have these conversations, we're in a unique position right now where we have this influx of dollars now to be spent in specific ways. And if you don't spend it, shame on you. But if you do spend it, to your point, which we've been trying to say to everybody in the next 2 years, we're trying to create contracts that are multiple years out and then plan to address that, whether it's hardware and technology or training, train the trainer models and things like that. But to your point, it's a real concern when you're given one-time dollars. What does it look like, and how do we avoid 10 or 11 years ago when it's like we have to make these, either we get rid of the program or we raise taxes, and that becomes the issue. So it's a good point that you're making, and we'll address that during the budget conversation, but it's something that we're worried about regardless without the funding coming through.
Thank you. And it could even be like, maybe we take this Lightspeed for 1 or 2 years, and then we sneak in the 3-year deal right out there at the end before the ESSER funding obligation window is done. But yeah, thank you. I know, Craig, I know you're on top of it. I just wanted to make sure that I voiced my concern regarding these recurring fees.
Just be careful, anybody who's watching this, about sneaking things in on the ESSER application. You have to, that's the other important thing you have to remember too. The application has to be, we have to apply for how we're spending certain dollars for certain ways, account for that and track it. And we could sneak in a new updated contract earlier at a discounted rate, but that ESSER funding has to be accounted for and spent in a specific way in a specific timeline. That's the other hook with all of this funding. So I saw Craig's face at me when that.
Okay, any other questions regarding this, or can we move on to the next agenda item?
The third item for this evening is, which will require board action as well, is the 22-23 professional development calendar. So each year, I show how we are going to use the PD hours that are allotted throughout the school, the one-page calendar. On the screen right now, you will see that we have 7 full days of professional development that amounts to 45 and a half hours. The dates are listed in the right-hand column. We have 1 contract and service day that the teachers fulfill sometime before, from July 1st until April 30th. They do something that they choose. We give them a menu of options, so that's an additional 6.5 hours. And then we have early dismissals, of course, throughout the calendar, and those dates can be found on the one-page calendar. Those times are usually once a month and on a first Wednesday of every month for elementary, and on Wednesdays for high school, and middle school's Thursdays. So all of that time amounts to about 62 and a half to about 64 hours. The 10.5 to the 12 is the range for elementary to high school, because their schedule's a little bit different at the high school. So that's why the range of those hours. So with all that we are talking about with online learning, online resources, new science standards, there's a lot of pieces for professional development, as well as many of our building level PD that must occur. So 62 and a half to 64 is not that much time to fulfill all of the needs that we have, but we do our best. So our focus for the 22-23 school year will be, we dedicate some days to building level plan PD. We focus some of those days on, so some are dedicated to building level, some are focused on curriculum level, and the building principals, of course, run any building level professional development around the areas that are listed there. That's where we have our mandatory trainings for compliance and PSSAs and Keystone. And the curriculum days are usually the focus for the district initiatives, and the supervisors and directors usually help with any district initiatives, technology initiatives, and curriculum and instruction programming. So that's how the calendar is broken down for professional development for this school year based on our one-page calendar. So that is a short and sweet presentation. Are there any questions about the professional development calendar?
I just would like to comment. We had our administrative retreat, and part of the opening, and I appreciate Board President Brown was there, I shared with the board, we invited Angela Duckworth, who's a district friend, to talk about goal setting, and we then broke up into groups to talk about setting goals for the district. And really the theme for that was an idea of kind of climate and culture and reestablishing that. And each group, each table, they were broken up into different compass points, and kind of universally throughout the administrative team was this concept of work-life balance, especially with teachers. And I hate to say this to Christine now and to the board and to the public, but there's definitely a concern that the staff are just overwhelmed with trying to complete their day-to-day activities, and are looking for more of an opportunity to do their jobs, and they're seeing the current market trends. So as we talk about this professional development calendar, conversations about when it becomes grading time, you know, having a whole day of students and then grading in the afternoon versus an early out. So there's been a request, not only from the administration, but the teachers, about more consideration of maybe an increase in some half days, some opportunities throughout the school year for time to catch up with their work and complete their work. So don't be shocked if we come back and have a conversation with you about adjustments to the calendar related to that work-life balance, not only coming from the administration, but out of respect for teachers and what they're trying to do in the current environment. This is really a good one-page summary, but if you broke out all of the trainings that they're supposed to have happen every day, it's a little bit overwhelming. So I just wanted to bring that point up to everybody as well.
Thank you for your feedback from the administrative conference you had. I think it's always appreciated.
The fourth item are our policies that would require board action this evening. So, Mr. Desnoyers, do you want to take over for our policies? We have 5 on the Education and Pupil Services agenda this evening.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Kelly. There are 5 policies being being reviewed in this meeting for updates. They are 121 field trips, 218 student discipline, 220 student expression and distribution of materials, 227 controlled substances and paraphernalia, and 237 electronic communication devices. The first policy, policy 121 field trips, this is being updated as a result of district interest. And for this policy, language is being added that clarifies the requirements in the PA school code, which is Pennsylvania law, and relevant court decisions under which district field trips must be conducted. The next three policies, 218, 220, and 227, are being updated based on fairly recent court decisions that have clarified the boundary between district rights and responsibilities in terms of providing a safe and secure learning environment and protecting life and property versus First Amendment rights of free expression that students have. So these are changes that are being recommended by PSBA, the School Boards Association, and they are fairly extensive. The last policy, policy 237, electronic communication devices, is being updated to keep current with the use of electronic communication devices in the educational environment and the use of electronic communication devices generally. So that covers the updates. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions about any of the policies that were read this evening? Do we have any public comments this evening?
We do not have any public comments.
In that case, Mrs. Kelly, will you review the agenda items that were presented this evening?
Absolutely. So the first item was the Wellness Policy Annual Update. That was informational. The second item was the Lightspeed Classroom Management, which would require board action pending we get the FAQs up and get some answers to some of those pieces that we discussed a few moments ago. The third item is the 22-23 Professional Development Calendar, which would require board action this evening to move forward, pending any changes that we might have to the calendar. And then the fourth would be some policies that we just described.
Okay, so we have the Lightspeed Classroom Management, which requires board action tonight. Are we willing to move that forward?
Yes.
Yes, with the caveat that Dr. Haig talked about.
Sure.
I heard three yeses.
This is Co-Chair Neal. There is consensus in the room to move it forward.
Thank you so much. I
You're
can't
welcome.
see everyone.
No, that's fine.
Okay. All right, and then we also have the professional development calendar for 22-23 school year. Are we also willing to move that forward?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I am also in agreement with moving that forward. Perfect. Thank you. I am going to turn this back over to President Brown.
Do we have to, on the policies, to move that forward?
That was informational, is that correct?
No, it says board action required on the agenda.
I apologize. Okay, so our policy 8.1, 8.2, 8.3, 8.4, 8.5, and 8.6 require board action. Are we willing to move those policies forward?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I will now turn this back over to President Brown.
Thank you, Director Williams. A motion is in order for the adjournment of the Education and Pupil Services Committee meeting. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting.
Aye.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned.